Does eating healthy sound life-sucking to you? Like, does the thought that eating healthy can be done in a way that brings rest seem like just a foreign concept? What if I told you that getting a B minus in this area is actually the healthier way to go? Well, if those questions stirred up any yeses in your heart, you're going to love hearing my guest today in episode number 84. My favorite dietitian, Jane Curry Weaver, is back with us today to give us 4 keys to more restful, healthier eating. Jane is my go-to nutritional theologian. That's what I'm calling her. I don't know if I just made up that term. If I did, maybe I can collect some royalties on the term. I don't know. But I call her that because Jane loves Jesus and she loves helping women like you and me be more content at our tables and in our souls, nourishing our bodies and our souls. That's her mission. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Listen in. Do you feel like you've been given a raw deal? Like maybe things did not go the way you'd imagined, or like you're struggling at times to just hang on to the faith that you wholeheartedly believe in? Well, my friend, you have come to the right place, and you are not alone. I'm Shelly Sneed, your host of Unperfect, and it's my weekly mission to inspire women just like you and me to persevere in faith through authentic stories and experiences that are rooted in the truth of God's Word. So hang on. Hope and probably some humor are coming up. So welcome back to the Unperfect podcast, Jane.
Thanks, Shelly. I'm thrilled to be here.
I am so glad to have you back. And when I heard your podcast on this topic, I knew I wanted to have you come on again, especially here at the start of a new year where I think we all tend to get super uber motivated to make goals that we can't possibly achieve. For the overachievers like me, and we go all in, shoot for the moon, and then we've got a lot farther to fall. And it just brings a lot of frustration. So I'm excited about the approach that you're going to share with us and what you call restful, healthier eating. And so I would love, as we just start off here, if you can explain what you mean by restful, because we probably have an idea of the healthier part. But what do you mean when you say restful eating?
Sure. Yeah. And it almost sounds a little dreamy, but restful eating is eating and not striving, not trying to have that perfect, whatever perfect is in mind when we're eating. And it doesn't take willpower to sustain if it's restful eating. You don't have any guilt if it's restful eating. It's just more automatic and restful. Yeah.
I love that. And I know you'll kind of shed light on that as we go through each one of these steps that you're going to share with us. So you have 4 steps to offer to us today regarding this topic. So tell us, what would be the first step to restful, healthier eating?
Yeah, and it's really just saying more about what we were just saying. So step 1 is, instead of striving for a perfect diet, aim to eat well. And I thought this is kind of funny being on your podcast, the Unperfect podcast.
That's right.
That's what we're striving for, unperfect here, if that makes sense. So it's unperfect versus perfect eating. A lot of us think that's the epitome. A lot of people think that's what dietitians do. We do not.
Right.
On purpose, because it is more restful and it's not realistic to be perfect. And so healthy eating is not perfect eating, and perfect eating is actually not healthy eating. So how can it be healthy? Right? Because healthy eating is not that striving that I'm talking about. So how can that be healthy and not just thinking of physically, but on your mind? So we really want to get rid of that idea of anything we do less than perfect is not healthy. So that's not what I'm talking about. So as I mentioned before, if it's a perfect diet, it's stressful, and we can't maintain it because it depends on willpower. And willpower, as we know, is not something we have an exhaustible amount of. So, but to define it and help us land a little bit closer, when we're looking at and striving not for a perfect diet, but aiming to eat well, that can be defined as eating well 80% of the time. So if we define perfect eating well, perfectly is eating well 100% of the time, it's more intentionally going for more like an 80% goal. So that's eating well, as I said, most of the time. And the other thing to remember is, if you are not eating something healthy, it's not undoing your healthy eating. Because often we think we have to make up for it. right? If we eat something
Right.
unhealthy.
Or
So
we just
that is,
quit if you're me.
yeah. 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 I'm like, oh, well, we didn't
I
do it
missed the
perfectly.
boat.
Yeah, it's true because we can get in that all or nothing thinking, right? That stinking thinking about having to do it so perfect in our mind that, we get in the way of it. And that's reminding actually me of a quote that a patient told me one time. And she said, don't let a perfect job get in the way of a good job. And that really does resonate when it comes to eating, right? Because we can do that, just like you're saying.
Absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
just give up.
I love that. And it's so interesting to me that because I never really thought about it till I heard you say this on your podcast, that how our perfectionist mindset kind of sneaks into our eating habits, that, like you were saying, that all or nothing mentality. And personally, I love the concept of 80% all the time. Like, that's a B minus, and that's like my love language. That's right. That feels doable, right? Like, I can get a
Oh,
B
yeah.
minus. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
hadn't thought of that of B minus. I love it. I'm going to use that.
There you
You're
go.
now going to be quoted.
I love it.
Yeah. And I think part of this 80% is really trusting ourselves to allow ourselves the foods that we really want, not just right now in this moment when they're there, but at another time. So taking that kind of, treat mentality away. Like, oh, I'm only going to allow myself to have it now. So I better, have as much as I can because I don't know when the next time is that I'm going to allow myself to have it. Right. So it kind of takes the pressure off. If I'm not trying to eat perfectly all the time, then there's room in that 20%. There's that wiggle room.
Yeah, I love it.
Yep. And I think just going along with what you were saying too, is that in between eating well and then trying these foods, we don't want to have restriction. Because if we eat well, then we restrict. We're in this vicious cycle, right? Of this all or nothing kind of idea. Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
So, yep. So an example I was thinking of, just thinking of myself reflecting, okay, how does this work? How does this play out, this 80%? And so the example I thought of is one food I really like is ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah.
So, in the freezer, you kind of forget about them. And every once in a while you stumble upon them and go, oh, yes, that will do the trick. I want something sweet or whatever. If it's a hot day in the summer, then that will be just fine. Thank you. And so I'll have one, or I may see them, like say if I'm getting something else out of the freezer, I'll have one, eat it, walk away and not think about them again. Right. But if that was in the category, same food in the category of, it's a treat. I can only have it this number of times a week or this time, you know what I mean? I can only have them now, or I don't know when I'm going to buy them again. That same box of ice cream sandwiches, it's going to haunt me until they're gone.
Right.
Right. Right. So it's sort of releasing that control some food can have on you when you realize, no, you really can have it as part of a healthy diet.
Yeah, I like that. It reminds me of that concept of if somebody tells you not to think about something, you're going to think about it all the time,
Right on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is really the concept of 80-20 eating that I like to use. So 80% of the time trying to eat well. And then the 20% is actually step 2, if I may jump into that.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so step 2 is make space in your diet for being human. So I've alluded to this already, but that's your 20%. So we don't want to go from a restrictive pendulum to like now we eat everything all the time.
Right.
Because, you know what I mean? Because we kind of go with this is the perfect eating I've defined or someone else has defined for me. This time of year, the new year, like what are our ads? We see everything about diets and exercise, right? And so someone else has defined what we should think is the ideal perfect eating for us.
Right.
And so then we try to fit into that. Well, it's not customized for our life. So as I mentioned before, it takes the willpower. We can't maintain it. And now that pendulum swings and we feel like we're a failure. Right. When in fact, it wasn't us that was the failure. It was the diet that was the problem, right? It wasn't real life. And it required 100% of the time of our focus and that willpower that we need for, our family, our life, ourselves, for other things important, right? So this is allowing ourselves to be human, and guilt-free. So like I said before, like that 20% is unhealthy and is not undoing the 80% that's healthy. It's actually helping us stay on the 80% eating well for the rest of the time.
Right. Yeah. I love that. And while we're on percentages, because I think we as women are so hard on ourselves, and maybe everyone is. I know women because I am one. But whether it's parenting or eating or anything, but this 20% reminded me. I don't know if you've ever heard of this concept of good enough parenting. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, I haven't seen the specific, but I can imagine what you're going to
Okay,
say. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So this psychoanalyst, actually, I'm sure he used statistics and studies to come up with this percentage, but he said if we are doing it right as parents 30% of the time, being attuned to our kids, that they can develop a secure, healthy attachment to us. And I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, holy cow, I can do 30%, But I
Yeah.
think we're just so hard on ourselves that if we fail, like you were saying in that last step, I know for me, it's like, it's beyond repair, it makes me want to quit. But this idea of giving yourself the 20% margin. So I don't see that as a failure anymore. I see that as, this is part of my 20%. This is actually part of the plan, instead
Oh, I
of
love it.
this is, I just ruined it all. So I might as well go eat the entire package of cookies or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's healthy eating, like you said. Yeah. I love that. Okay. You just made me feel better about my parenting. I just got to say.
That's what I'm here to do at Unperfect. We're going to
I love it.
normalize we are not perfect.
That's right. Yes.
No,
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. Did you have more
Yeah.
on that step?
Just one final little point is with that 80/20, it helps us not to have to keep track, as so many
yes.
diets want us to, like it's saying, oh, you can have this much of this and you have to keep track of that and enter it into your phone. And oh my goodness, all these reminders. But not keeping track is freedom.
Yes.
I'm telling you, right? These percentages are so much easier because we know how percentages go up and down. One day it might be 70/30. One day it might be 90/10. It doesn't matter.
Right.
We're just looking for unexact so that there's freedom within it.
I love that. And I have tried those apps before, and I'm sure there's time and a place where, a food diary comes in is helpful. But I mean, when it wants to know how many carbs and whatever, and I'm like, I just ate a casserole. I have no idea. Like, I can't pull that thing apart. And it goes back to what you said about restful. Like, it's not restful to think of if I have to track every single thing. No, I'm 100%. Not resting right then. Absolutely.
You got it. Yep.
All right. So tell me about step number 3, Jane.
Sure thing. So we've got the 80/20 down. And so step 3 is focusing on one change to your eating habits at a time. So for some of us that are, recovering perfectionists,
right?
We want to do it all.
Yes.
Especially this time of year, the new year, we're like, oh, we're really focused and motivated, as you said. But really, when you look at the evidence, you look at the research on change to behavior habits, it really is tiny changes. And then we build on another tiny change and another tiny change. And that's hard for us that we want to do it all at once, but it is restful and it is more successful in the long term. And so I encourage people when you're looking at goals for the new year is to look at, eating habits first as your goal, not weight or shape goals.
Yes.
A lot of time we'll have, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Oh, I'm going to want this shape. I want these clothes to fit this certain way. I encourage you, I want to say that's not restful. And I encourage you to go to where are my eating habits? Is there one thing that I can change? So that being said, though, when we look at what is your goal, we want something specific. And a lot of you guys have heard of these SMART goals where you want to have something specific. But, saying that, this year, 2025, I'm going to eat healthier. It's too lofty. It's too vague, right? What do I put on my plate now? I don't know.
Right.
Eating healthier. What do I do next week? And how do I gauge if I've done what I want to do? Or another example is I want to eat more whole grains. Sounds a little more specific still. We want really specific so that it's small and it's something that you can attain and it doesn't take that willpower that we're talking about because you've got other things to use that on. Yeah. Okay. If you need help for that, I'm going to give you some links, Shelley. There's some foundational posts that I did that's on like the step-by-step first 3 foundational steps for healthy eating. It's sort of like those pivotal things in our diet. And in there, there's some self-assessment tools. And so you can kind of look at yourself and say, okay, how am I doing? And when I stop and look, what's one thing I can do from here? And maybe for the whole family, not just for myself. So it's not just something that's just for me,
Oh, I love that.
And that makes it easier too.
Sure.
Yeah. So an example is and you're thinking about this, what is something that you want to eat more of? something you want to eat less of. So, for example, eating no fast food is not restful because that's an all or nothing.
Right.
And we've been talking about all or nothing, right? Eating less is restful,
Right.
So think more or less versus never or always, because those ones are lofty and hard to do. And I recommend, instead of saying I eat less of something, I encourage you to displace, not erase, former food habits. And what I mean by that is focus on maybe eating some more of the beneficial foods rather than less of the non-beneficial foods.
Yeah.
Right? So
I like that.
maybe more fruit for snacks, or more vegetables, maybe 2 vegetables at supper instead of 1. So that just naturally displaces maybe something you want to eat less of. Or maybe it fills you up so you're not eating as many snacks later, that kind of thing. So if we focus on the positive, that's more restful, right?
Absolutely.
Rather than focusing on negative. Yeah. So I had a story that I thought of in our family. So every year I do try to do one New Year's resolution with eating. And this is several years back, but I had not yet adopted in our family some quinoa. And I'm like, this is super healthy. I want us to learn to like this. So I first started, I didn't even know how to cook it. So I plunked it in like I would rice, and I tasted them like, oh, this is not great. I can't expect my family to like this.
Right.
And so, but I wanted to stick with it. So I, read up on it. It's like, oh, you need to rinse it if it's not a pre-rinsed kind. Okay, that started to taste better. Then I saw, oh, if you want that really, nice nutty kind of flavor, toast it either dry or with a tiny bit of olive oil before you boil it. Then I'm getting on to liking it. And then eventually moved on to adding spices, and then, adding extra to the pot. So I had planned over so I could make a quinoa salad. But I have to tell you what my boys' reaction and my boys' reaction the first time I made it. So I make it, it's there to help themselves to scoop it out. And they're like, what is that?
Right.
What did you make for us? And they said, it looks like toenail clippings.
And they're like, Mom has lost it.
Yeah, totally lost it. And it made it all the more appealing. But we didn't give up. We didn't give up. We kept on. And at first, it wasn't a default thing I made. So it took some while to get onto it. But now we all like it, and we all eat it in different ways. And it just was that one change, one easy food, like one food, and that's it. And now it's a healthy food that it's a default in our our menu or whatever you want to say, like it would be rice or potatoes. And so, that's how it's easy. It can be that. And then you feel great about it because now you've got something new to your diet that's healthy.
Yeah. And I love that thought of just even trying to cook something a different way. Because I remember growing up, I had only seen or tasted asparagus like from a can, really mushy. And so my default was I will never, and now I love it sauteed and crispy and, it's, so I like that idea. I was thinking too, when you said, because when you first said displace, not erase, my thought went to like making a trade, which isn't exactly where you were going with that, but it made me think of something that I'm doing now that I think could fall in this category. I was laughing because the last time I had you on the podcast, I'm pretty sure I talked about Hershey Kisses, like with every step that you gave it. And it was just because I'm addicted to Hershey Kisses. And then we were buying them all the time because I had other kids in the family that like them. So I no longer buy Hershey Kisses. And my kids ask me for them. I'm like, sorry, I can't have them in the house because I'm addicted. But I also can't have no chocolate in the house because I love chocolate. Right. And if I don't, it's kind of what you were saying in the last step. I'm going to overdo it if I do all restrictive or whatever. But I have found that I really like dark chocolate covered nuts, and my grocery store has they package them up specially, and I can just eat a few, so I can have them out and just pass by and eat a few or whatever. So I was just thinking, I'm still getting the chocolate that I love and crave, but I've kind of replaced it with something different that's I'm not gonna go crazy over, but it is, and hopefully it's a little healthier because it's dark chocolate and protein. I don't know.
Nuts. Yeah. No, that's great. And, we all figured out for ourselves, right? Like what works for us.
And it goes back to that one small change making a difference. Because I'm doing the same thing. My biggest thing right now is I'm trying to drink water, which I know some people love water. I do not. Like, it doesn't taste like Dr. Pepper or a white chocolate mocha latte, which is I would be fine if it tasted like either one of those. But that's my biggest thing right now is just that one change. I'm making sure I have water bottles when I get in the car, because that's a great time to just sip when I'm sitting or whatever. So it's definitely
Yeah.
doable if you can find one thing to change, then to be like, I'm going to overhaul my entire plan, and by Friday I'm going to throw the plan out at the backyard.
So true. I could do it. Yeah. No, that's great. And I love that, because you know what? It's restful, because, you're kind of
Exactly.
picking away at it, right? You're picking away. It's like cleaning out a closet. You're picking away at it, getting it done.
Right.
But it's still progress,
That's right.
and
That's right.
yeah. And you're learning to like the water, right? Just like
Right.
we learned to like the quinoa, right?
Right.
So,
And
we
I've
forget
learned
that
this is kind of like the quinoa thing. I like water hot.
Mhm.
Like I guess I just thought, well, if everybody wants cold water and cold water bottles. And my daughter-in-law's mother was here visiting, and she likes, like, she'll have one of those pots that it's kind of like that electric kettle kind of thing, and she just
Sure.
drinks. And I thought, you know what, that must be what it is to me. Like, I actually don't mind. I like it better when it's hot. So
There you go. Still water.
it's right. It's still water.
Right. And it started with your decision, right? It's like, I need to drink more water. And you kept at it till you found a way that worked for you. And that's really all that's all about. Yeah. Good. That's great.
I love it.
Okay. Good. All right. Step 4. I think we're at that already. So really, once we've gone through this 80-20, where we figured out that we don't have to eat perfectly all the time and we're still eating healthy, and we look and go, okay, what's a tweak I can do? One thing at a time, one food at a time, displacing, not erasing. Step 4, we get to reap the benefit of restful eating, right? Because now we've kind of arrived and we realize, okay, we can exhale. We don't have to have this perfect way of eating. And now we're not actually wanting that food all the time that we craved before that was restricted, because we're now saying it's okay to have. It's all right to have it, actually. And I'm still doing okay, still eating well. So that in the end, we'll moderate portions too, like, because we're not overdoing it and underdoing it. And it helps you make peace with food and have rest at your table, because it's just more, well, I guess, what's the other word for restful? I don't know. It's a restful approach to eating. Right. It just takes that striving away and allows us to really connect with how our body's made, and being able to listen well to what our body's telling us. Are we hungry? Are we full? Have we had enough? And if we have something, it's okay. That's not healthy. Right. It's still, we're still nourishing our body overall. And that is really taking care of the temple, because this now is, I think we get mixed up about healthy in emotionally or mentally as well as physically, and so with it being restful, that's eating well physically as well as, mentally, so that God can use us right where we're at, because we are taking care of the temple, mind and body, when we do it that way. So this is, really, soon you'll be the person, I wrote down here, soon you'll be the person who can eat what you want when you want it, right? We always think of that person that they can eat everything all the time, but no, it's actually a person that is restfully eating, that can eat what they want when they want, because there isn't that kind of restriction or striving attached, and not guilt when you're eating those other foods.
Yes. And I love that. And not every time you said not striving, that's our striving is so antithetical to what God calls us to in scripture anyway, right? It makes me think of the gospel, like, where we're just, I got to do one more thing. I got to do one more thing. I got to do one more thing, instead of what you're implying here. It's as much a mind shift change as it is practical changes in the way you're eating, right? Because you're no longer thinking about the external goals. Your goals become what's life-giving, really. What's going to be life-giving for me when it comes to my table, and not just what's going to make me look better, what's going to make me, fit into that 100%. Dress, whatever the wrong goal would be there. They're not as restful goal, for sure.
That's right. You got it.
So I just have one or two more questions I want to ask you before we go. And I love everything that you've shared so far. But what would be one word of spiritual encouragement that you could give our listeners? One thing I love about your your ministry, your website, your writing, is that you talk about nourishing the body and nourishing the soul. And I love it. Everything you write is so beautiful. And just as we start off this new year with health goals that are going to be high on our list, what would be one word of spiritual encouragement that you'd want to leave with our listeners?
Sure, Shelley. And I think something we have to do is, that grace with ourselves. Really, that's the first step, and realizing that we're a work in progress.
Right.
We haven't arrived till we get to, the kingdom with Jesus. Yep. So in Philippians 1:6, I'm just going to read it in the New American Standard Bible. For I am confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work among you will complete it by the day of Christ Jesus. And so we're just, we can't give up on ourselves. God's certainly not giving up on us. And I really love that, how you said about, one more thing to work out our salvation. And I know I can certainly fall into that too.
Sure.
But God's not done with us. Sanctification, if I can say it, is a lifelong process, right? And so just be gentle with yourself, grace with yourself. God's never going to give up on you. So we can't give up on ourselves, when it comes to even eating and being well. So one step at a time, and look to the one that is our true value. And that will really be restful for yourself, your spirit, mind, and body. Nourish both body and soul, I guess.
That's right. Oh, I love that. And I love that verse. And I love how it starts off with that we can have that confidence. Like, we can have that confidence. He's not done. He's working, and he's going to continue to work. So I love that. Now, you did mention some links that we're going to put, and I know you have a freebie too that you offer to your subscribers. Can you tell us just a second about that, and then also just where our listeners can find you? Because I know they're going to want to connect with you and just see all the wonderful resources that you have.
Yeah, sure. So I have a freebie called 7 Reasons You Don't Have Peace at Your Table. And it's on a freebie page, and I'll explain where that is in a second. So there's a couple on there that are free, and then I keep, as I develop them, and I add them on. So if you have that one link, you'll get to all of them. And I have a newsletter called The Contented Table, and that's on Substack. So you can find me in one of 2 places, and they both link to the same endpoint, but it's janecurryweber.com. or janecurryweber@substack.com. And you can sign on there for a free newsletter, and you'll get notifications of like a blog post or a podcast episode through that newsletter. And then we have a community there where we can, chat through comments, or there's also even a chat function where we have a community. I just say, pull up a chair to the Contented Table, and we just cheer each other on. As we just try to find peace at our table and rest in our spirit. Through words of nourishment for body and soul. So I'd love to have you join me there.
Absolutely. I love reading what you write, but I also love hearing your voice. I know I've told you that before, but you just had, when you read for your podcast, or you read a blog, because there's that option on Substack, I'm just like, oh, this is so soothing. Like, talk about restful. That's restful to me, is to listen to you share.
Funny.
What wonderful content. But thank you, Jane, so much for being with us today, for encouraging us in this area, and just reminding us to have a different mindset that's one of rest, instead of that striving. That's so good. Good encouragement for us in every area of our life, but especially this one.
Oh, you're most welcome, Shelley. I'm so happy to be here, and keep doing what you're doing, because it really blesses me too. I need that reminder that I need to be imperfect, not perfect, and walk the talk. So thank you so much for that too. I was happy.
You're welcome. Jane shared so many good ideas and strategies and mindset moments for us in this episode, didn't she? And I can't wait to hear how it all resonated with you as you look to these 4 steps to find a more restful approach to eating healthy. So remember, number 1, instead of striving for a perfect diet, aim to eat well most of the time. We can do that. Number 2, make space in your diet for being human. That 80-20 principle, put that into practice. Number 3, focus on one change to your eating habits at a time, just one. And number 4, reap the benefit of restful eating. There are some very helpful links in the show notes that Jane has offered us to go along with these steps. There's some self-assessment tools she talked about, some other resources so that you can literally pull up your chair to a more content table. So be sure to check those out and subscribe to her newsletter. She's also got some plain Jane recipes there, healthy yet easy to pull off. And I know you'll enjoy connecting with her there and on the podcast, The Contented Table. As always, I'm praying that you are able to see glimpses of God's glory in the now and the not yet of your unperfect life this week. So go out there and be proud of that B- girl, because we got this. I'll see you next time.